Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Real inspiration for real innovators. If you're looking for innovation and leadership transformation, your journey starts now.
Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bourne. I would love if you would help us spread the word by leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts so that other innovators like you can find us. And I want to welcome the 60 plus countries listening from around the world. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube as well and hit subscribe there. Well, today I'm talking to Matteo Grassi. Matteo is the co-founder and CEO of a funded startup called Popup. Before that, he founded a very successful e-commerce company called Viceroy. And he's also a brand consultant for companies in the past like Ferrari and Alfa Romeo. Not to mention, he spent his youth as a street performer. I hope we kind of get into that at some point.
Yeah,
Welcome to the podcast.
Biggest accomplishment.
Well, welcome.
That's happening.
That's awesome. Well, okay. So before we really dive in, we have to talk a little bit about your street performer. We got to go into that for a second.
Yeah. So I started so I'll start a little bit from when I started actually breakdancing. Both my parents come from art, so I was always exposed to arts. My dad used to be a composer, my mom is a singer, and then a theater teacher. So I started performing art very, very young age. I got into breakdancing just because I know it sounds like the classic guru stories where I was poor living in a car, things like that. But it actually did come from not a very wealthy family because my parents were in the arts in Italy as well. So there's actually not a lot of money in arts. But I wasn't living in a great neighborhood. And I think that was the time where hip hop and breakdances started. I think it started in the 80s, but really ramped up in the early 90s as well. And this is what I'm talking. I was born in 82, so I'm talking about 94, 95. I started to breakdance with the kids from the neighborhoods. And at the same time, I was doing theater as well. I was performing in theater in the school. And then I actually joined a theater company when I was 16.
Wow.
And I ended up representing Italy with my crew at the time to the World Championships in Germany called Battle of the Year in 1997.
Okay,
so
that's
I did
a
pretty
little
good.
bigger. That's a little bigger than just a street performer.
No, yeah, I did go when I finished my degree in psychology. I never traveled anywhere until I was 21, so literally never left the country. I saved money I paid my studies, and then I saved some money. It's Italian university, it's not US university. Don't think about 30, 50 grand a year. It's for about $1,000 a year, like a good university in Italy. So the education system is not that expensive. But I was able to save and move to New York, and I got into Broadway dance school. So I actually wanted to become a dancer. And then when I moved to New York, I went to the Broadway dance school where there was people from, I can say, probably 60 countries. I like your podcast listeners. But there was no way I could do what I could do without sacrificing a big part of my life to just do breakdancing or be a professional dancer. And I realized, oh my God, there is a world out there I want to see, because New York was, to me, the epicenter of the representation of the world, right? You have every culture, every food, and I literally never experienced anything in my life outside Italy.
Wow.
So I was like, I want to see the world. I want to travel. I want to see the world. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this 6 hours, 7 hours a day. Wow. And so I left New York after 6 months and start traveling around the world.
Wow. That's really cool. I love that story. So now take us into present day. Tell us a little bit about your company, Popup Store.
Yeah, so Popup is my latest venture. We started over a year ago. We started during the time of Viceroy Group, which is a portfolio company of 7 direct-to-consumer brands on Shopify. I met my business partner. I'm actually the co-CEO of the company. Actually, we kind of scrapped this whole CEO thing now. So it's like, it's just founders, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I met him during my time in Shopify. We met for like a week. I was one of the first employees in Shopify in Europe. And we joined at the same time. We went through training at the same time in Canada, and there was a snowstorm, and we got locked into this hotel. So we had a kind of we were literally the only two people in this hotel, and And I was like, okay, just I think, yeah, we just bonded, and then we lost touch. We chatted for a while. He was in Vancouver, and I was in Ireland. So, but then I gave him a call, and we started this direct to consumer company that did fairly well, bootstrapped. And during that time, we realized we wanted to do something different, and we realized that there was something that we could do for the merchants on a global scale, and that's why we bootstrapped for a while. We bootstrapped Popup. And then we closed the funding round recently, like November last year, which is going to be announced next week. There was delays it was the war and other things, and so we decided to kind of postpone it. But yeah, we closed the funding round that allow us to take the company to the next level and competing with one of the biggest company in the world, / my past employer, which is Shopify.
That's cool. That's really cool. So I want to know this question because I love talking to founders about, like, what is that point where you decide to bootstrap? And then when is the point when you decide that it's time to go for funding? Like, talk about how you guys were able to figure out where that point in the business was.
Yeah, actually very simple. I think it's like you have to ask yourself, what am I building? And what is I don't think MVP exists anymore, minimum viable product. You're already going on minimum lovable product that is usable by your customers or your future customers. So what is my product, and how long is going to take me in terms of time and money to be able to go to market to my future customer and get some traction? So the moment we realized, okay, Popup is not an app, we are not going to live on top of Shopify. We are going to create an end-to-end e-commerce platform that is going to eventually compete with a company that's $1 billion in cash in their bank accounts. And if it's not competing with them, we're competing with Wix and Squarespace that are or BigCommerce that are on the stock markets. Yeah. So that's the moment you're like, come on, let's not fool ourselves. We're never going to be able to create a product that's going to be usable without having money to build it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's like, so there's no right answer to like right or wrong answers. Should I bootstrap? Should I raise capital? Things have also changed a lot. I think 2022 is not 2021 when you go raise money. Now, if any of your listeners are wanting to raise money, what you're going to face is they will want to have some traction. Raising with the pitch deck and your story and your expertise is not enough anymore.
Yeah.
Now, that traction doesn't mean that you actually have to build a product. It could be a community. It could be a podcast. It could be that you are a LinkedIn influencer and you have a lot of followers. But they want to understand, hey, do people actually buy into this idea? Even though it's not a product, even if it's your idea, what you're trying to prove, do you actually have proof that people want it? And this is what you're going to see from 2022 onwards, which I think is normal. I think it's like there were crazy times where people were raising with a pitch deck millions of dollars for products or apps that are not scalable. There was just like a lot of money thrown around. Things are going back to normal now.
Yeah, exactly. As the market compresses, they want more proof that what they're putting their money into is going to actually create a return. So
yeah.
Okay, so you posted this thing, and I have to we got to talk about it. So you posted on LinkedIn, I scaled an e-commerce store from 0 to 4 million, and in 2 weeks with one product, and I didn't make any money.
Yes.
We got to hear that.
Yeah, we did make $1 million in profit, but then it was taken by disputes and credit card fines from Visa and MasterCard. Not many people know that, but once your dispute rate goes up, meaning that your when one of your customers in any e-commerce store that uses a credit card provider like Visa and MasterCard, it goes through a payment gateway, like the most famous payment gateway or the most popular is Stripe. Then what happens is Stripe has a dispute rate that is usually 0.5 to 1%, meaning that if you make 100 orders, if one of them opens a dispute because they don't receive the product, they're not happy with the product, anyone can open disputes for a number of reasons, then they keep that in consideration. Once you pass that for a considerable amount of time, then Visa and MasterCard, they start to fine you for the amount of the dispute that you're getting, and that's $50 per dispute. So when you're losing a dispute, you're losing the money of the product completely because the consumer still receive the product most of the time. And then on top of that, you get $50 fine on the credit card. our dispute rate went up to 700%, and we had over 5,000 to 2,000 disputes a day for a while filed into Stripe. And the winning rate is about 20%, meaning you're pretty much losing them all.
Wow.
So the money was made and the money was gone. Because when you scale this hard, then without considering that there is actually people making products and ship them on the other end of the computer, then that's what happens. And this is what happened to me. You see the numbers, you see the ads and everything. Like, oh my God, this is so exciting. But you don't realize actually there's real products that are shipped from a location to real people.
Gosh.
But this is the thing of e-commerce. You're really detached from, especially when you are not building a brand. And at the time, we were just literally selling online. We were conversion rate optimization expert, we're marketing expert. We were looking at marketing. What gives a kick was the numbers, right? And you have this dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Every time you put 10,000 in and you get 20,000 back, and then you put in 20,000, you get 40,000, and then you just go. It's like you're high. You're high on, I don't know, you're high on life and making money and all these numbers are just on the screen. And I think that's what happened during those 3 weeks.
Wow.
I remember scaling those campaigns still like this today. And I remember calling the Facebook reps and say, hey, I need 300,000 spenders per day now. It's just like you go. So that's how we lost them. Yeah. And that's I don't think those days are gone. I don't think it's possible anymore. Facebook is a very different advertising platform today. Payment gateways are way more strict. Everything got stricter.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2018, so it was 4 years ago.
Wow.
4 years ago this week.
Gosh.
This week 4 years ago. Yeah, because it was the Black Friday and Christmas.
Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we scaled the blankets. This is a secret product. Type Google chunky knit blanket, and that's what we were scaling.
Wow.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, we were talking a little bit about kind of the challenges and the pros, right, of being an entrepreneur. There's extreme benefits and extreme challenges or disadvantages. And I love to talk about this because I think from the outside listening in, if you've never actually started a company or been in a startup before, you sometimes can kind of glorify that. It can look really shiny on the outside, but someone who hasn't been on the inside doesn't know how difficult and challenging it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I think people should embark in a journey of being an entrepreneur the same way you embark in a journey or like in an adventure. And you don't go in an adventure because you necessarily want to reach a destination. You go in an adventure because you love the adventure. You love the journey. So it's not, but you are an explorer at the end of the day. And an explorer is trying to draw a map and really enjoying the whole process of discovery. You're not someone that is going to a destination. So if your destination is like, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur because I want to make $1 million, I want to make 2 million, I want to have a lot of money, or I want to do this, I want to do that. So if you have that goal set in mind, and entrepreneurship is just a way for you to achieve that goal, and the goal is defined, especially most of people are money, then I would say don't. Because if you don't enjoy the process, you're going to crash. Mm-hmm. Because it's impossible not to have up and downs, and there's going to be so many bad days, so many good days. And at the end of the day, you have to enjoy the game. You have to enjoy playing it, and that's what has been a thing for me. And when I try to kind of inspire others as well.
Yeah.
And I never thought about entrepreneurship as a way to make money. For me, it was a way to achieve freedom in a time where I wanted to travel the world and I didn't want to be a waiter or a bartender. And there was kind of the only jobs available that if you want to travel around, you can do, but it's also at the same time, you're also limited by language.
Right.
So I knew I couldn't go and be a waiter outside countries where English was not a language. I couldn't go and live in France or Spain or any other countries that I wasn't speaking the language. And I didn't necessarily want to move to United States or Australia or UK. Or I ended up living in Ireland. I mean, that's the main reason actually why I ended up here because of the language. If the same story that I lived through my 20s and early 30s was now, where remote work took place, it would have been a completely different story.
Different world.
Different world, yeah, of course. So for me, it was what can I do that I don't have any skills. I don't have skills that allow me to work remotely. Like, I don't know how to develop. At the time, web developers were the only people that kind of had this kind of remote life, weird remote life. I'm talking early 2000s. That's kind of to give you like the time framework, like 20 years ago. And for me, it was e-commerce. Maybe if I start my store and I do this e-commerce thing, and then I can live whatever I want. And I didn't have any knowledge in marketing. My background is consumer psychology, behavioral psychology, and then I turned it into basically consumer psychology, and that's why I ended up doing marketing, because marketing is kind of psychology as well. Big part of psychology.
It is. It's a huge part.
Yeah, selling to people. Yeah,
it's actually terrifying how much psychology is a part of marketing.
I know. I had conflicts a lot of the times, the way manipulation techniques apply to advertising, and I've done all that stuff.
Yeah, it's shocking. We don't even realize we're being swept away when we are. I want to talk a little bit about this conversation we were having before we hit record. And we're looking at the world. The world is we're addicted to our phone. We're addicted to technology. We're addicted to social media. How have you personally started to kind of change that in your own life? Like, talk to me a little bit about that, because I think especially being an entrepreneur, you do so much work on your phone. You do so many things on your phone. It's just like almost like an extension of your own hand. And you've started to kind of figure out different ways to pull back from that so that you can have some normalcy.
Yes. So for me I wanted to cut off social media, and I did a kind of, not a mistake. I did something that I thought it was going to help me out, but in reality, what I did, I replaced LinkedIn with my social media usage by fooling myself that it was a work tool that allowed me to grow my business. And it wasn't really social media because I like social media. I actually hate social media, but yeah, LinkedIn is not social media, right? So that's kind of the lie that I told myself. And then I realized that I was spending pretty much 3-4 hours a day on LinkedIn, and work related maybe 1-2 hours. And then the rest of the time I was doom scrolling on social media, looking at other people, not really consuming the content or using the content. And I had to take a step back, and I took a month off, and it happened. It was like a burnout, pretty much.
Yeah.
I could not pick up my phone. It was really weird. I remember I felt like panicky every time I was touching my phone, and for a month I could not create anything, like blank. And I took some time off, and then I go back to it. With rules and with more structure. I went back to therapy as well, with a coach / therapist. Been in therapy a few times in my life. This time I think I went with someone that could help me with accountability rather than figuring things out.
Yeah.
I'm kind of good figuring things myself out, so I didn't need to understand what was wrong with me or why was I doing things. Thanks to my degree and also the years that I did in real therapy, I have things figured out. But accountability is the biggest thing. So you go so far if you kind of understanding what you have to do, but if you can't implement what you have to do, then that's it. I mean, really doesn't change. It's actually worse, because then you're aware that something is wrong.
You feel guilty all the time.
Anything about it.
Yeah.
So 2 things. I started to use LinkedIn mainly on my computer and try to not using as much on my phone. And I'm doing coloring books for adults, mandala meditation coloring books. And that allows me to not spend so much time on my phone. So when I want to do something to just clear my mind, and I need literally to clear my mind a lot of the times, that kind of helps me. Yeah. And social media, it's an escape, I think.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, it truly is. We were talking about this before the podcast started, like, the average person, what they call normal, which is also kind of terrifying, person touches their phone 100 times a day, but the addicted person touches their phone 900 times a day, or at least that's a stat that I've heard out there. And so that is concerning. It's deeply concerning for relationships. It's deeply concerning for, getting out in nature and being able to see the world, it's deeply concerning for all these places because we weren't really built like that. And it's almost building a false sense of community, a false sense of relationship that's not actually there. And so I love that on your journey, you kind of discovered some of these things.
Yeah, and I think it brought to extreme during the war in Ukraine. My wife is Ukrainian, and we were here in Ireland when everything started. And a lot of people that are connected to Ukraine that are not in Ukraine, they experience the same thing.
Yeah.
This war was literally brought in by on social media live. Right?
Yeah.
So literally ended up, I think the first 2 months of the war, we ended up just spending 3 hours every night to 4 hours every night, just checking feeds of Telegram, Instagram, TikTok, and it's a constant feed of news. You don't watch the news, really. You just,
right.
And I think the news is not necessarily bad because the news is filtered and it's limited as well, right? So you sit down, you watch the news, you get the information, and that's it. But when information is accessible anywhere,
Unlimited, yeah.
And you are in constant stress and you want to know what's going on and you're not there and you're trying to kind of fill up this anxiety that you have because something is happening. That's it. I think that kind of kickstarted a lot of things. And then you arrive to a point where my wife now completely removed all the news, all the Telegram channels. She literally, even though she wants to know, she completely cut it off. And a lot of Ukrainians did. A lot of friends have been through exactly the same thing.
Wow.
Because when nothing happens, like this war is like a siege, right? So things don't happen, but media speculates, right? So because they have to keep the things rolling. So what if this happened? What if this happened? I heard about this, I heard about that. But if you look at the cycle in the last 6 months, there's probably 5-6 major events that you would say, oh, I would have wanted to be informed about this. The rest has been just speculation. So I think that's what kicked off then everything for me and then for my wife too. And we had to kind of take in drastic measure to cut off social media. So in a way it was good because sometimes you have to be pushed to the limits to realize that maybe a problem that it was small before, it got really, really big. But then once you solve it, You're actually going in and try to solve it. I realized that we actually had a problem before the war.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And like you said, news is filtered when you're watching it, but then even when you read the news, you can filter it through your own like kind of brain and say, well, maybe that's not true, right? Or let me think about that. And I think with information so accessible and coming at us so quickly, you do look up and it's 3 or 4 hours later and you're down this hole, like looking at something. And, for people who are dealing with a lot of anxiety, this I would actually recommend is one of the first things you can cut out is how much news you consume. Because, when we look at news back to back and all these bad things, like you said, all the speculation, it does create anxiety. Never before in our lifetime, right? Even in times when we had wars hundreds of years ago, right? Like you didn't get a play-by-play update of what was going on with that war, right? It took a little while for that information to come of what was happening. It wasn't just you could consume it 24/7. That to me becomes toxic to us over time and creates a lot of anxiety in us. And we're not really built that way. And so I think it's really important what you're saying. I think it's a really important point you're making about how you've created some boundaries so that you can be healthy mentally, right? You have to figure out what those boundaries look like. It's true in your business and it's true when you get home.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's something I was discussing the other day that it's also, my daughter is 10 years old. I think she will have a much better relationship with social media than me because I needed to adapt. I was born in a time that I was born when the internet came out, right? And not born, actually. I was a young, I was 12 years old probably when the internet came out. My daughter was born within social media, right? She was born right in the social media. So her usage, me educating her and things like that. My generation, millennials, I think we needed to adapt. We had to adapt to this. We weren't born with iPhones and social media. We weren't born in social media. Yeah. So I think we're still playing catch up in many ways.
Wow, this has been such a cool conversation. I'm curious, what final thoughts would you have for our listeners today?
I think something that I say is always like, don't take goal setting in your life too seriously. I think goals are guideposts along the journey. And I think for me, a big difference in my life is when I started to kind of come up with my big why. And the big why is something that can never be achieved. Why you should set up something that cannot be achieved, because the moment you achieve the goal, then what's next, right? What is the next goal? What is the next thing? What is the next thing that you want to do? As if you set up something that can never be achieved, it kind of keeps you being motivated for the rest of your life. And whatever you do in terms of goal settings, which if you are an entrepreneur or if you are curious about life, it's going to change constantly. And there's always going to be something that you want to try. You're always going to try to break the mold, and life is going to surprise you in many ways. And you realize maybe this is what I want to do, and then you want to pursue that. But if you keep that kind of long-term plan, a long-term purpose, you're going to see that no matter what you do, and the goals that you achieve or not achieved are making you move forward. You end up actually enjoying what you're doing and enjoying the journey and focusing on the journey instead of focusing on what I want to achieve next.
That's really wise. Where can people find out more about your organization?
So Popup Store is the company, but on my LinkedIn, I have my link tree where you can check also the other things that I do, like the charity project, the anonymous man founder community for mental health. My music as well is still there, if you want to listen to it. And so I think, connect me on LinkedIn, which is still my platform, obviously with a more mindful usage. I'm not addicted to anymore, or I'm still addicted, but I'm trying to manage it better. But you can connect with me there.
I love that. Well, thank you for your time today. This has been amazing.
Thanks, Natalie.
Well, to our listeners, thank you for joining the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. And remember, don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.
Thank you for joining us for the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Innovation Meets Leadership, and visit our site at innovationmeetsleadership.com for more innovation resources.